Africa, indeed, is at a crossroads, with a youthful population that will be the largest global workforce in the next 2 decades. We are a land blessed with natural resources beyond compare, and a continent that is the very embodiment of resilience and hope. Before us stands opportunity for our people, our nations, and our future. Behind us, a past in which we have not always lived up to the highest expectations of our people. In the last decade, developing and least developed countries were spurred by the Millennium Development Goals. The attainment of these goals by 2015 has been imperative for us. In this regard, African countries are playing an active role in leading and advancing discussions on the post-2015 development agenda. Kenya is currently co-chairing the Open Working Group on Sustainable Development Goals, which is steering the dialogue on the post-MDG agenda. These goals will play a vital role in shaping development thinking in years to come. Indeed, I'm also glad to note that Africa is the first region in the South to have developed a common position on the post-2015 discussions, which emphasizes structural economic transformation, inclusive growth, and environmental sustainability. Africa's own growth agenda is now at the very heart of the international development practice. We, as African leaders, are working more closely than ever before with our continental institutions. We have defined and committed ourselves to the establishment of building blocks for a future that is critical for our continent's growth. We identify that investment is multifaceted, human-centered, future-focused, and sensitive to both intrinsic and unlocked value of our human and natural resources. This approach, I believe, is the very bedrock of what an inclusive economy is typified by expanding economic opportunity for the majority of our nation's population and leveraging on the society's assets in order to increase the overall well-being of our people. Ladies and gentlemen, today the most significant challenge confronting the world and to our continent is indeed the challenge of inequality. But Africa's narrative is now changing. The impressive economic potential and prospects has brought about a greater sense of optimism in Africa. The continent, Africa, has over the last decade become one of the fastest growing regions in the world, and as has already been stated, with 8 out of the 10 fastest growing economies being in Africa. In 2013, Africa maintained an average growth rate of about 4%, this in comparison to 3% growth in the global economy. Further, Africa's average growth is projected to accelerate to close to 5% in 2014, 6% in 2015, thus to levels last seen before the onset of the 2009 global recession. Therefore, in this regard, Africa is standing in an incredibly privileged position, being a center for global growth. We are proudly watching the continent rising to be an international powerhouse and becoming an investment destination for both advanced and emerging economies. Indeed, it is no surprise that frontier economies such as Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Nigeria, and Botswana are roaring loud as the African lion. And yet the tide of growth is rising at an incredible pace, and Africa is yet to fully reveal herself. In the last decade, Foreign direct investment to the continent has increased fivefold, with the largest share of that investment flowing into the mining and extractive sectors. As African countries, our focus should now be on developing a skills base that is reflective of the opportunity that rapidly growing sectors hold. As we develop our future workforce, we must start thinking more broadly about our educational investments that will cement our growth in years to come. It is important that we harness the skills and the expertise that is critical to growth and development. Engineering skills to run drilling operations, legal skills to negotiate positions that protect our present-day assets into the future, technology skills to run the digital networks that are needed to monitor operations, and outstanding vocational skills to build and maintain these assets are critical to our economic and intellectual maturity as nations, and to economic and livelihood prospects for our young men and women. Here in Kenya, we have re-energized our National Youth Service as a program that instills dignity in all spectrums of work, embeds national values and social cohesion as a benchmark for a new generation of young Kenyans, not only impacting the servicemen and women of the National Youth Service, but also the communities that they serve. Further, Africa is rapidly growing its digital footprint, and Kenya has established itself as a leader in the field of IT innovation with groundbreaking inclusion products such as M-Pesa, Ushahidi, putting this country on the global map. My government is committed to ensuring it reflects the digital DNA, and this is evidenced by our commitment to building these skills from primary level and shifting the modus operandi of how government works through an e-government platform. Our Huduma centers have been established to accelerate service provision to citizens through e-service. Such commitment has been actualized by our partnership with the Rockefeller Foundation through their Digital Jobs Africa initiative, whose goal is to connect high potential but disadvantaged youth to jobs in the digital economy. Through this partnership, and in collaboration with the private sector, high school graduates from Nairobi's informal settlements undertook digitization of medical records at the Kenyatta National Hospital, the country's largest referral hospital, and the digitization of judicial records in partnership with the National Council for Law Reporting. This initiative not only made these legal records available digitally, but also converted the records into formats accessible to the visually and hearing impaired, thereby providing access for an often excluded segment of our population. Ladies and gentlemen, this multi-impact approach builds jobs for our youth, who may not have been absorbed into employment, and enables citizens quicker access to their information, enables companies to have triple bottom line value, and improves the skills of these young people through on-the-job practical experience that enables them to move up the employment chain. It builds on the significant growth of ICT infrastructure that has taken place across the continent and leverages what is perhaps our continent's greatest asset, a talented youth population, and our own demographic dividend. Moreover, this approach exemplifies new thinking by challenging employers to embrace inclusive hiring as a sound business practice, extending opportunities to those who might otherwise have been excluded. In 2013, we launched the Uwezo Fund, which is aimed at enabling women, youth, and persons with disability access finances to promote businesses and enterprise at the constituency level, understanding that jobs are also self-generated and entrepreneurship is a key driver of our overall growth. In addition to Kenya, This approach has currently been deployed in Ghana, South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, and Morocco, and has resulted in thousands of jobs. Our next frontier should be focused on how to replicate these multi-impact models in a variety of sectors, including infrastructure development, natural resource management, health, conservation, and agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, turning to agriculture, we recognize that this is still the backbone of many of our economies, supporting 90% of basic livelihoods across the region and the continent. And yet food insecurity and improved livelihoods remain elusive for many of our nation's citizens, evidenced by the fact that 70% of Africa's poorest are engaged in agriculture. Moving towards systems that are farmer-focused and that ensure highest value returns along the value chain, while maximizing the incomes derived from the producer of that good, has to be the future of our agricultural approach. Innovative and human-centered models that meet the income aspirations of our farmers, while allowing our children, families, and communities to benefit from proper nutrition, which we know yields outsized productivity benefits for every shilling spent. This should be the way we approach our investments in this sector. I am glad to note that one of today's panel discussions focuses on the symbolic partnership between consumers, producers, and buyers in agriculture, and how the value chain can be enhanced for all. Keenly informed by both successful and not so successful practices that have been employed in the past. Let me move on to infrastructure, where my government is paving the way in opening up regional trade across the continent, understanding that nations are intrinsically co-joined in their regions and have a responsibility to that relationship. Recently, we in Kenya flagged off the joint South Sudan-Ethiopian transport corridor, which will spur regional and economic inclusion for the people of this region. Trade integration is essential for Africa to realize its full economic potential, to participate in the global economy, and to share in the benefits of an increasingly connected global marketplace. Having 54 individual countries, often without the physical and economic machinery to act in tandem, significantly limits optimization of this opportunity. Regional bodies can shoulder this responsibility of strengthening an integrated and economically diverse Africa to include young and old, women and men, rural and urban communities alike, to firmly establish our continent as a premier global emerging market. Ladies and gentlemen, while progress towards inclusivity may seem a difficult goal to measure, new African-centered approaches have now been developed that are reflective of our interest, intellectual input, and continental goals. As part of our commitment to be a beacon on the continent, Kenya was a pilot country, along with Cameroon, Morocco, Senegal, and Zambia, in the recent launch of the Africa Social Development Index, developed by the Economic Commission for Africa, in collaboration with the Ministry of Devolution and Planning, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, and the University of Nairobi. The index will enable us to assess the actual extent of exclusion and inequality in our nations by measuring human exclusion and assessing our performance towards inclusion development along the entire life cycle. We are honored to be part of the first phase of this pilot, knowing that lessons learned from here will be used to strengthen the application of the index. I encourage the other 49 countries on the continent to rapidly adopt this tool as a way to set targets and monitor their own progress with regards to inclusivity. Ladies and gentlemen, as you engage today, my challenge to you is to be proactive, to be bold in your thinking, and to have an open mindset so as not to reinvest our scarce resources in approaches of yesteryear that have not yielded optimal results for our people. But most of all, to think about our continent's future and how, in your individual and institutional capacity, you are contributing to a higher quality of life and a better future for the multitudes whose voices are not present in this room. After all, we are not inheritors of this land, but keepers for the generations of Africans yet to be born. Indeed, with these few and many remarks, it is my pleasure to declare the inaugural Joint Forum of the Rockefeller Foundation, the African Development Bank, and the Economic Commission for Africa on Inclusive Economies in Africa officially opened. I thank you and I wish you great deliberations. Thank you very much.